everybody. Welcome to the Roundup with Thinali. I will be your host. Sri Lankan economy, a topic that is widely raved about in Sri Lanka and all across the globe. You find it trending in social media, on news broadcasts, and even at family gatherings you hear your uncles talk about words like the monetary policy, the foreign exchange rates, and debt traps, and you might be a little confused as to what all this means. If you're not an avid follower of Sri Lankan political and economical shenanigans, I'm here to help you out. So today in conversation with me is an incredible personality who will set straight all your doubts about the Sri Lankan economic situation. Professor Dayarathna Banda, an incredible professor of Peradeniya University, an economist, a really good one at that. But before I introduce you to him, I have a very important question that I would like to ask before we get into all the economic drama. Sir, you are a role model to all Sri Lankan youngsters. We have a lot of teenagers and a lot of graduates in our audience, and I'm sure all of them would love to know how you got so far in your career as a star exhibit of what the Sri Lankan public education system can offer to individuals.
Thank you. Well, actually, I am from one of the villages in the Thinali district, and I came to the University of Peradeniya in 1991 as a student, and then completed the Bachelor of Arts Honours degree in Economics in 1995 with the first class honours. And actually, I am a recipient of the Mahapala Higher Education Fellowship also. And then I actually completed the Master of Philosophy degree, and I moved to the National University of Singapore to complete the Doctor of Philosophy. And also after that, I was invited by one of the Canadian universities, University of Waterloo, to be a research professor. I spent 2007 and 6 in the University of Waterloo as a research professor, doing research on international trade and trade policy, trade-related agreements with one of the leading economists in the world, Professor John Molly. And then returned to Sri Lanka, and after that I visited various countries for research activities like Shanghai and also Romania. I would say that I have been spending a lot of time in doing research as well as teaching. In addition to that, actually I was the head of the Department of Economics and Statistics, and I was the Dean of the Faculty of Arts for 6 years. Actually, I served as the Dean of the Faculty of Management in the World University for 1 year in my sabbatical. So I think I have been doing various different things in addition to teaching and research in my career. Yes.
Absolutely, sir. That is quite a lot, and I'm honored to be at your presence. So for starters, I have one question that we hear everywhere these days, and that is about the foreign debt problem that we are facing as a country. So, is it actually that bad? But if it is, how did we get here in the first place?
Yes, we do have a debt problem, foreign debt problem. Normally we call it a debt cliff. That happens when you are unable to service your debt. When an economy is unable to service our debt. How that happens? Basically, when your foreign reserves are not sufficient to actually make payments or debt obligations to the foreign partners, that happens. Actually, in Sri Lanka, long time ago, I would say in 2012, 13, 14, actually we knew, economists knew, policymakers knew, I know central bank knew, I know Treasury knew that we would have this problem in 2020, 2021 and 2022, this new debt cliff. But in that, as I said, our foreign reserves are insufficient to meet our debt obligations to foreign. And the problem with our debt and our development policy for a long time, I would say it is about 40 years, there were a few problems. One, I would say our foreign debt, our borrowing, basically are highly unsustainable. Why? Now, for example, starting from about 2009, 10, 11, we have been actually borrowing from the foreign open markets. These are called development bonds, but basically these are dollar-denominated bonds. What you do is you borrow from the European markets, but you issue bonds denominated by dollars. So when you borrow, they are their market rates are there and very short term to medium term, and you have to definitely repay them once the maturity comes. And for example, from 2015 to 2020, we have borrowed more than 10,000 million, I would say, dollars. So the problem with that is one of the things. I would say that borrowing from the open markets without having a forecast as to how we are going to repay them, how our foreign exchange situation will be, I think I would say borrowing is not an issue. Foreign debt is not an issue. We borrow for development purposes, but that debt should be sustainable. So I would say one of the problems that we experience in Sri Lanka is unsustainable borrowing from foreign countries. And then we had this, what did we do with that money? One of the major problems, once you borrow dollars or yen or euro, yuan, whatever, you know that to repay them you need dollars, euro and yuan, yen. Because nobody is going to accept Sri Lankan rupees, right? You can't pay them by Sri Lankan rupees. You need dollars. To generate dollars, you would have actually invested those dollars for in debt in actual export promotion, export sector, basically. Whether it is agriculture, industry or services, the debt would have been actually devoted to promoting export capacity in Sri Lanka. But what happened in Sri Lanka for the last 20-30 years is that we have been diverting this foreign debt for non-tradable sector. We normally call non-tradable sector. Non-tradable sector means that products are not actually exportable. For example, if you take agriculture in Sri Lanka, a huge amount of foreign debt has been used to develop the capacity in agriculture in Sri Lanka. But you know that there is no export capacity in the agricultural sector. And there are other sectors like that. So I would say one of the biggest problems that we had in our foreign debt related development policy is that we have been using foreign debt for non-tradable sector, which was not able to generate sufficient foreign exchange. So if we spend that, invested that money in the export promotion sector, whether it's agriculture or industry, we would have actually created the export capacity. And that I would say, in addition to that, actually lately, since 2015 or so, we have been borrowing to repay the debt. That is the most serious problem. So you are unable to generate revenue adequately for exchange, so that you borrow to honor the foreign debt, and that creates a cycle where you are going into a trap. That there is no development from the foreign debt, but you are borrowing to repay the debt. So we are here, I would say it's not a current or recent last year problem. There are policy problems. I would say that central bank and the treasury should have predicted this problem long time ago, and they should have, and the government should have this data that we are going to have this. I know that they knew, the economists knew that this is going to be the case, but I think lately, now for example in 2022, according to the official records, we have $7 billion dollars are required on another day. $7 billion are required on another day. But current standing of the foreign reserves is 3.1 billion. So you have a very serious problem, but I would say there are solutions if you seriously. So that's where we are.
Right. That was a very extensive review, and I feel like we are in a debt trap, as everyone is saying, and it's not exaggerated, it is really bad. But at the same time, sir, so this is for the youngsters, and you mentioned about the central bank and the treasuries. There's also this component in the system that is called the finance ministry. So I would like to know, what do these bodies play, what are the roles of these bodies, and also what can they do to actually get us out? You said the central bank actually predicted that this could happen, so they did nothing. That is pretty evident. I'm pretty sure they did something, but it didn't get us anywhere. So what do you think collectively they could do?
Yeah, normally in Sri Lanka or anywhere in the world, normally there are two kinds of policies that we talk about when it comes to macroeconomic policy. One is called fiscal policy, other one is called monetary policy. So the fiscal policy, the responsibility of handling the fiscal policy lies with the Treasury and the Finance Ministry. So that is basically handling the government revenue and expenditure. Fiscal policy is all about handling the government revenue and expenditure. Government revenue includes tax and various other non-tax revenue. So that tax management, tax revenue collection, the policy is related to that, all are matters of the Treasury and the Finance Ministry. And also expenditure. Expenditure means all government-related development work, paying the salaries, and all are part of the job of the Treasury and the Finance Ministry. So they are handling basically, and statutorily, their role is actually revenue management, collection management, and also handling expenditure, deciding what to do and what development work to do, and that all that, including the public sector, is the Treasury's job. So basically, it's all about revenue and expenditure of the government. When it comes to monetary policy, it is in Sri Lanka by law, it is the responsibility of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, basically. Monetary Law Act, there is an act called Monetary Law Act. According to that, Central Bank is responsible for price stabilization, which means inflation control, and also exchange rate management, which is related to the balance of payments and foreign reserves. And also Central Bank is responsible for money supply into the economy, not the Treasury. Central Bank is the one which is actually deciding how much money to be supplied to the economy and depending on the economy's capacity and all. And there are various other roles played by the Central Bank statutorily, legally. But these two are connected because now, as you know, the Central Bank is the agency of the government that actually do the banking work for the government. And on behalf of the government, Central Bank is the one which is actually managing and negotiating foreign debt. It's actually the Central Bank which has to negotiate with the foreign debt providers about borrowing and all. And which is why Central Bank has a lot of economists and experts in that. So as you correctly said, in order to come out of this, policy coordination is required. Central Bank and statutorily, all these in the Central Bank, these decisions are taken by the Monetary Board. Actually, Treasury Secretary is a member of that board by law. And so the policy coordination, Treasury and the Central Bank together, we say accommodating monetary policy sometimes, because when the Treasury and Finance Ministry wants expansion in fiscal policies, sometimes the Central Bank will have to actually complement it by having accommodating monetary policy and vice versa. But as a whole, I don't want to actually, it's not that you can easily accuse, allege or blame anybody. It's not simple as that. It's not handling economy, and it's not as simple as that. Even though we think this should have been done, this should have been done, I would say they might have done whatever they could actually. My judgment is that actually since 2015, before that, because all of, if you look at Central Bank, Treasury, sometimes our colleagues, our students, we know what they are doing, and I don't want to allege that they failed to do it. I don't think so. But the problem is not that. Problem is our long-term development policy and debt-driven development policy, and we have been borrowing unsustainably, and that I think it will say all governments. You can't say that this government, that government, all have been borrowing. So now the problem is that, as you correctly said, we need a coordinated, very solid kind of action if you want to. I think this is doable. This is not a pessimistic scenario that I don't think that we are going to collapse and we will be having a disaster, and all these are politically motivated nonsense, I would say. And Sri Lanka has a lot of intellectuals, experts who can actually make things happen. So I am not pessimistic about the future. Yes, we are in a difficult situation, but that doesn't mean that we will end up in a disaster. It's not possible. Sri Lanka is capable of coming out of this debt problem as well as other issues, I would say.
Right, so that's actually really good to know, because that means we finally can expect to see some light at the end of this tunnel. So with that, I would like to get to the root of the problem. So you said people not borrowing sustainably, but we know that there are places that are in the world that lend good money that comes at very small interest rates. It could be something like the IMF, there are concessionary loans that they can get from abroad. But why did the previous governments go to these development ones where the interests are high and the regulations are very strict, rather than going to these concessionary methods of borrowing?
No. Yeah, the problem in this actually again is not a problem with the policymakers. Now, concessionary loan, so aid or development assistance is given to normally poor countries. Okay? And as you know, Sri Lanka, it was actually this year we are low middle income country, but 2-3 years ago we actually advanced to upper middle income country. So nobody is going to give concessionary loans to upper middle income countries, like the World Bank or ADB, unless they are targeting very specific sectors like promoting higher education or skill development or specific projects. Normally, these development assistance are not available to upper middle income countries or low middle income countries. So that is where we are. Actually, in 2005-06, we actually moved away from poor countries. We are no longer poor countries. So then our opportunities were very, very limited. Now, for example, IMF actually that they don't give loans for development purposes. Their main target is, we are a member of the IMF, and our main target is exchange rate management, balance of payments, and that sector they are targeting. So that they have been lending us to overcome, but IMF borrowing is linked to various serious policy reforms and structural changes, and that is also area. Now, I would say that the Sri Lankan policymakers were compelled to go to European open markets because of the difficulties that they faced in the conditionality of the IMF and the World Bank and various other. And we have been moving away from the World Bank and IMF to China and others because they had less conditionality, high interest rates, but conditions are low. But I would say it's a choice that even dollar-denominated bonds is not an issue if you actually were having a proper plan of how you are going to repay them and be borrowed sustainably. Because that bonds do not have conditions. There are no conditions. It's just you are borrowing from the markets on interest rates. So, but I would say that again that it's not from where you borrow, but how much you borrow and whether that debt is sustainable. So the IMF is not going to give you money just because you ask on whatever dates. Now they are giving, they have their own mandates and all. But the thing is that as far as I know, their main bargaining present is that at least two things. You need to have very serious restructuring of your debt. That will be very, very difficult for the government country, and also various other fiscal and policy reforms in the country, maybe trimming the government and public sector, and all. There are issues. So yes, as a nation, we shouldn't have gone to open markets borrowing too much. We should have managed it with bilateral sources and multilateral development agencies, and also I think I would say in the long term we should have switched over to developing domestic economy, capacity of the domestic economy, rather than depending too much on this debt-driven development. That I think should have been the focus.
Yes. So when you said we need to work on the development of the capacity of the country, I see even though we are constantly borrowing, but we're borrowing for infrastructure development projects like port cities, highways, and there's a crowd that says this is absolutely useless because we are borrowing and building, but this will only put the future generations in a continuous debt trap. At the same time, there's also the fact, like you said, we need to improve the capacity, and clearly transportation development increases access to all around the country, and this could benefit. So, what is your take on it?
Actually, I would say that our infrastructure development program is at least 30 years behind. We are not ahead. We are at least 30 years behind our infrastructure development. You see, let me give you one example. Now, a lorry load of cement to be transported from Colombo to Kandy. Now, it takes 4 hours. And you can compute how many lorries has to come per day and per month, and then compute the cost. And if we had an expressway from Colombo to Kandy, it would have been 1 hour drive, and wear and tear of the vehicle and parts and also time. All these, if you compute, the cost should have been very, very low to transport from Colombo to Kandy. And so that is one example that I want to give. So therefore, it's absolute nonsense to say that we don't need infrastructure development. We need that. We are late actually. That is why for example, let me give you an example. A person who is living in Anuradhapura, suppose the person has to work in Colombo, in a company. Now, because of the current infrastructure, the person has to migrate to Colombo. There is no other way. The person cannot work in Colombo while living in Anuradhapura. The person has that cost, mobility cost, migration cost. The person has to give up the family, and there is a huge cost attached. But if he had an expressway from Anuradhapura to Colombo, the person would have actually traveled daily and worked in Colombo. So therefore, you cannot simply actually tell that this is based on very, very I would say unintelligent political beliefs. You need infrastructure development. We are behind. But the problem is that how do you do that? How do you do that? Now if you take in Sri Lanka, labor is abundant. We have excess labor. There are a lot of people who can work. That is a resource. You think it's a problem, but unemployed people is a resource. What is the problem? Two things. Maybe you don't have capital. Second, you don't have technology. Right? To build these capacities. Now, that is also problematic when you look at it. If you look at 2000 years ago, 2500 years ago, how our ancestors built these huge reservoirs. They did it basically human labor, intelligence, and all. But I would say port city is fundamentally required if you want to engineer growth that will generate jobs for educated labor in Sri Lanka. There is no other agriculture. It cannot generate jobs for educated labor. We all know that. And these are actually prominent places that we can do. But now, if you want these roads, I would say we should have done these road development, expressway development through build, operate and transfer system. Foreign direct investment, build, operate and transfer. How do you do that? Now, for example, Chinese investors may be there who want to build a Kandy-Colombo expressway using their money, their technology and all, but until they recover their cost, you give it to them 10 years or 15 years or 20 years or 25 years. So after they recover, that can be done through an agreement. This is a very, very long system. And then transfer after 25 years, you get the road transferred and maintained. So that kind of that kind of foreign direct investment should have been the solution rather than borrowing too much. And how can you do that? You can't do that easily in Sri Lanka because there are politics around it. And when you talk about investment and somebody will go to the roads and fight that we are going to sell the road and we are going to sell that. So government has to handle that run, right? So therefore, the people who are asking this question is part of the problem. Right? They are not the solution, they are part of the problem. If you want a solution, either if you want you should be able to build expressways by using your labor and your technology, and that is not possible because of various reasons. So foreign debt is not a sustainable solution, but we should have gone for especially toll roads. Now that is what we did for Hambantota Harbour and Colombo Harbour. We swapped it to FDI, right?
And do you think that is a very successful measure?
It is a solution. We have to see whether it will generate benefits, far-reaching benefits, but it was a solution. It was a better solution than borrowing. But I would say we need infrastructure development, and we are far behind any upper middle income country in terms of this. And it's difficult to actually promote investment, promote tourism, promote agriculture development, agro-based industries and all others unless you have a very efficient transportation system in the country. That is a requirement. So go back to the British period. In the British period, you know that in the plantations, their first priority is to build roads, railway system. That is because you cannot actually promote development, export and trade unless you are able to move your products swiftly to the ports. So it's required. But how you do it is a different thing.
So that makes a lot of sense, and I feel like we've been finding figures at the wrong places. And also with that, sir, we talked about how foreign reserves are a problem, right? And if you look at the current market, you see that dollar rates are skyrocketing, and the black market dollar prices are over the top. It is at an all-time high, and this might be, I'm guessing, this might be the reason why most of the prices of the products are also increasing. Import bans, all these problems we're facing because of the dollar rates, because of the continuous increase of dollar rates. So why is this happening, and what can we do about it?
Yes, actually, exchange rate depreciation, if you look at, is related to the balance of payments. When you have continuous persistent deficits in the balance of payments, definitely the result is that domestic currency is going to continuously weaken. That is. So there again, the exchange rate behavior is linked to the foreign reserves, the amount of foreign reserves, and the foreign exchange earnings and all. So when we have difficulties in foreign exchange earnings and the reserve capacity, the problem is going to be with the exchange rate. So the depreciation is related or linked to the lack of capacity in the foreign exchange earnings to actually stabilize the. Now, for example, if you look at the dollar or rupee exchange rate or any other exchange rate, I would say if the central bank take its hand away from the exchange rate management thing, even though officially we have floating exchange rate by law, central bank is actually intervening in the domestic market to stabilize the exchange rate. But if central bank takes away its hand from the market, I would say rupee-dollar exchange rate actually would rise up to more than 250 rupees per dollar. That's the scenario. So that black market reflects that actually. Black market prices reflects the actual market prices. So that central bank, why does central bank do it? For the reasons that you mentioned. If central bank allow the exchange rate to move to that level, we know that imports are going to be expensive and it will actually contribute to the domestic inflation very badly, and so they are trying to manage it to some extent because so it's part of the problem of foreign exchange and reserves, but the black market is always there when you have controls, government controls. So I would say that before we end up to the central bank and the policymakers, that we need to very swiftly, gradually get close to the market rates. Otherwise, what is going to happen is that when you hold arbitrarily onto this, you will not be able to do it long term. It will be difficult. So that now it's not a current phenomenon. If you look at 2013 or 2012, and now the dollar-rupee exchange rate has doubled. It's not within 10 years our rupee has weakened by 100%. So that's because this too is linked to our historical. Now, if you look at our export to GDP ratio, has been declining since 2007, 8, 10 to now. Export to GDP ratio has been declining in Sri Lanka. It is related to various things. Now, these various concessions given by the Eurozone and the North American countries for our garment exports and others, they actually removed them, right? As we know, these concessions that they give, and therefore we were relying so much on these concessions given by them, and we were not able to compete in the open markets. And when they were removed, our exports actually were affected, especially garments and others. So, exchange rate problem is there, but it is not a sudden thing. It is also due to the issues that I discussed previously. Yes.
So that is also been building up for a while.
Yes.
And also, sir, something that we cannot turn a blind eye towards is the fact that we are undergoing a global pandemic. So how do you think COVID-19 has affected everything that has been happening in Sri Lanka?
Yes, actually, just if you look at the data just before the COVID-19 pandemic, from 2017, 18, 19, we all serious economists knew that we are in the wrong path and we are going to have a deep recession in 2020, 2021, 2022. That was new. Everybody knew about it, serious people, that we are growth rates were slowing down and debt to GDP ratio was actually in 2016. Since 2016, actually, debt to GDP ratio started having a negative impact on growth. 2016. So it's not now. So that, but then came this. Now you see the COVID-19 pandemic to Sri Lanka, as you know, had various negative effects. If you take, we call them shocks, but supply side due to lockdowns, as you know, the continuous lockdowns, factories were closed and tourism sector was completely gone, and so therefore our export capacity as well as foreign exchange earnings were affected seriously by the impact on tourism, and also certain manufacturing sectors were negatively affected in terms because of the pandemic, so that it added to the problem that we had. And then demand side also there were losses, as you know, in the tourism sector and various other sectors, and earning losses because, as you know, during the lockdowns, private sector workers were not paid the full salary, and there were various, so that earning losses, job losses actually reduced the demand to a certain extent. And if you combine together, I would say the COVID-19 pandemic, I take it as a natural disaster. I don't take it in terms of economics. So that it had actually, it's like actually the adding salt to the wound already. We were in a serious problem, but COVID-19 pandemic. So therefore, I would say that this is why some countries like United States said that okay, you can't close down the economy, we cannot shut down the economy because we will be in trouble, so that let people die or whatever happens, we will continue. So it was a choice. I would say COVID-19 pandemic actually added a lot of negatives into the already declining economic fortunes, and I don't think anything better could have been done by any policymaker because of the situation that we have been facing. Yes.
Right. So pandemic or not, seems like it would have eventually
happened
here.
It would have, yes.
And also, sir, we talked about how bad it is, but now I would also like to know what can the government or even us, what can we do to make, how can we recover? What are the short, so talk first, let's look at short-term policies because we need solutions now. So what sort of short-term policies can we look at to recover?
Yes, I would say the foreign debt problem immediately, it's not easy. You need very, very skilled negotiators, experts, economic experts to negotiate. I would say to get out of this, you can't do it for the dollar denominated ones, but you can do it with bilateral donors.
Could you maybe explain what
Yeah, bilateral means you borrow from your friends like China and various other two-way borrowing. It's not linked to any global thing, but it's a two-way thing. You can easily.
Is that what we've been doing, borrowing from China?
No, we have been borrowing. No, what I'm saying is that bilateral sources are there, and multilateral sources like IMF, International Monetary Fund, and ADB and World Bank actually give project lending, not this kind of lending. But I would say that to get out of this quickly, I would say one of the solutions is to postpone the debt payment. That how do you do that? We call it negotiate for a debt moratorium with bilateral and multilateral sources, and that will require a lot of policy reforms because you have to present the package to the IMF and others and say that okay, in the long term we will have these reforms and we will solve this problem, and until that you are separate for debt repayment. And that should be possible with IMF and other. I would say rather than borrowing more to repay debt, that should be, I would say 3 to 5 year moratorium should be negotiated, and that's a very hard thing because you need very skilled, experienced economic experts, negotiators who can negotiate, not politicians. I'm talking about very serious people, experts. And then the other thing is that if you can't do that, that is, some people call it debt restructuring, whatever it is, you need kind of a break. And I would say that debt restructuring to spread it out again. Now the maturity dates can be renegotiated to have it spread into a future at least 10-15 years, so that, but dollar denominated ones you can't do that because they are market. At least in this year, by August, I know you need $1 billion to repay for all these bonds, development loans. So that I don't think private banks, investment banks in Europe will agree to renegotiate negotiate and do moratorium, right? But I think the quick solution, I think, what is the alternative? You declare default, right? If you now that will be inevitable. If you don't have foreign currency or the exchange to repay the debt, that is the crisis point. We are still not in a foreign debt crisis. I don't call it a debt crisis. Debt crisis is a situation where you are unable to honor your foreign debt. You are going to default. We are not defaulting still, right? We are still.
What happens when you default?
No, that will have very serious consequences in the long term. Nobody is going to lend you, and we will not have avenues to borrow, and that problem will come, and it will have various other effects on trade and our credibility in the global markets, and also the investors will be very reluctant to come here and invest. There will be a lot of problems that will come if you default. That is, think about you default your bank, what is going to happen, right? It's same as for the country, right? So default is not a solution. It's going to have devastating effects on the medium to long term. But that is one solution, is to actually put a moratorium. And the second is actually, if moratorium is not possible in the short term, I would say rather than borrowing from bilateral sources and open markets, we should negotiate with the IMF. That is because IMF, but that will have a huge cost in terms of conditionality. Because they come up with various structural reforms, public sector spending, disciplines, austerity. There are various things that they may come up. But if that is the solution that you have, if there is no alternative, then tell the people that this is where we are, and then we will have to do that. Right? But in terms of people, I would say there is a problem in Sri Lanka in the mindset of the people. Now you see all these, now the government borrowed, you can say corruption and others that you can say, but you also know that the borrowed money has been spent to build, if you look at Maharani development project and various other things, this money has been spent to develop the country also. Corruption may be there, but you can't say that all the money will be corruption. The development has happened, it is for our benefits, people. Now the thing is that I see in this crisis, the resilience of the people, we don't see much. And that is a problem, because now I think media has something to do with this, politics has something to do with this. One way for the people to respond is to actually be optimistic, develop confidence, and produce more, work more, create more, and find new solutions rather than waiting for the 225 people in the parliament to come up with solutions. That is the most foolish thing to think, because you have 22 million brains in Sri Lanka, but you think 225 brains can solve the problem. That is not how you should respond. We should find our own solutions. We should think of actually developing entrepreneurship, new businesses, new ways of earning foreign exchange. There are things that people can do alone. And it is not the government that is solely responsible, whichever the government, which party is in power. But I would say that consumer confidence, producer confidence, investor confidence, develop optimism. I would say this continuous pessimism. You see in the media, when you look at, they say this is over, we are going to collapse, we will be over, and this country is going to collapse, and go away from this kind of mindset. You see, in economics we say that it is your instincts that matters a lot. How you respond to a crisis, whether you take swift actions to produce, work harder, and that. So I think people in Sri Lanka, I would say, they care about themselves, not about others, that they will have to work harder and find solutions, be confident and optimistic about the future, Well, those three things I would say in the short term we will have to focus on. And government, I think, these negative ideas about putting them into the people and creating a very huge pessimistic scenario is we will be having already it has had very bad effects that is going to. So government will have to do, I think, tell the people the truth. That is what I would like to say. We have economists who can analyze the situation and tell the people the truth. This is how it happened. This is where we are. And this is how we have to handle things. And this is what you should do if you want to get out of this. And that will require actually cutting expenditure in the government side, especially lavish things, ceremonial expenditures, and politicians will have to show that yes, we are disciplined, we are not doing wasteful expenditure, and all that will give confidence to people to actually. So I would say, as a country, if you want to get out of this kind of a problem, you have to work together as one people and work hard rather than putting these politics to the front and not doing anything about it.
So I think to be evident, the transparency can do wonders with helping with the situation. But also, when we talked about short-term policies, what are the long-term policies?
Yes. Yeah, in the long term, I would say debt problem. I would say in the long term, no country in the world can rely on foreign debt continuously and generate persistent, permanent, sustainable development. It is not a solution. So you have to move away from this development model in the long term. You need to develop domestic capacity and domestic demand-led development, develop export capacity, and in the long term, I would say, for 40 years, since 1977 to now, we have been practicing this debt-driven development agenda. And we have done some good things, we have achieved some things, but I would say in the long term, in the future, we will have to switch over to something else. And that something else will include, actually, this is one of the controversial areas because these foreign direct investment. Because whenever you try to use joint ventures or foreign investors to come here, then our people start, some people, these politicians, trade unions start fighting, saying that we are going to sell the country and sell that one, sell this one, and then why do you give land to foreigners, and this political. But solution lies with the foreign direct investment to a great extent. You have to go for joint ventures with investors, prudent investors, and you have to allow foreigners to come here. And the third thing is that you need to divert your attention from so-called agricultural-led development to industrial service sector-led development. That is another area that you need to focus on. Because agriculture, it cannot, I'm talking about paddy and related agriculture, it cannot generate foreign exchange capacity. It is required, you have to have it, you have to protect it, that's all true. But to think that agriculture sector, focus of the agricultural sector can lead to development overall is a myth, it is not possible. So therefore, we have to move away from that development agenda and make the agro-based industries, other manufacturing industries, services sector, and also I think we need very serious economic reforms in Sri Lanka. My thinking is that in Sri Lanka, the problem is not that government is not doing anything or enough. My thinking is that government is doing too much unnecessary things, and they are actually intervening into everything in the people's lives, and like a nanny state. So that is not how it happens. That is why I said at the beginning that cabinet of ministers and 125 people in the parliament, their brains will solve the problem. That is not going to happen. So I think government should focus on critical areas, essential areas for their intervention, and let the people do their things. for that actually, a lot of tax reforms are required. Incentive systems have to be improved for the people to engage in productive economic activities. For example, you see in Sri Lanka, if you talk to entrepreneurs, investors, they will say government is a problem. They will not say that. They will say get away, don't do too many things to us. Let us do our work. So I think in the long term we need to reform our state and the government, the process, subsidies, taxes, and various things. And also for fifth one is actually the tax system. In Sri Lanka, tax to GDP ratio is about 12%, which is completely insufficient. So we need to raise that because
and I think tax evasion is also
very high, corruption is there, and there are various issues. So and also I think there are areas where you can generate a lot of foreign exchange. One, nobody will like it actually. Education sector is one of the leading sectors that you can actually develop to attract foreign exchange. How? But we will not be able to do it in Sri Lanka. If you take medical, engineering, and there are a lot of foreign countries where you can find students to come here to study by paying money. There are and we have experts in Sri Lanka who can train people, but we are not ready. So education sector is one of the leading sectors that we can develop to attract foreign exchange. Because a lot of people will come in, and the other one is health sector. Health sector capacity can be now, if you look at certain countries in the world, like Singapore, education, health, they earn a lot of foreign exchange through that. So that not only this Western medicine, in Sri Lanka we have these indigenous medical systems for various things. So that sector you can develop a lot. And then business process outsourcing. And startups, small businesses, collaborating with our young people actually can do lot of things by collaborating with. I think they are doing it various things. They are doing various small things, but create an incentive system for them to actually do it properly. With that, I think developing the export capacity. Yes.
So when you said there are young people doing things to develop the country, I know I have friends who do things like drop shipping, content networks like Fiverr. They at very young ages they bring currency. So maybe we could aid
Yes, because you see I think don't give them subsidies. I think that is the end of that. So not the subsidies. Create the regulatory legal incentive environment. If they have to get a license, give it free. Possible. Right? Quickly, give it free, quick. And networking, create systems for networking, and that can be done through the telecommunication, certain specific technical support they require, they can be given actually. So that I think this is where I say that solutions are there with the people and their minds. They are trying things. But we have empowerment, not through subsidies. If you do it through subsidies, these young people will think I have subsidies, so I don't have to do anything new.
So the entrepreneurial mindset.
Yes, that will go away. So that I think, as you correctly said, our young people, not only young people, this country has a huge capacity. This is if you look at very seriously, patiently, and analyze this country, we wonder why this country cannot develop the way we want. Because we have that, but I don't know whether we do have that passion and environment and political and cultural environment required for the people to be innovative and entrepreneurship issues and go for startups. And that is another area that we should look at in the long term. Yes.
So I have the final question for you today. We talked about long-term policies, but one thing that we constantly see is because of the constant political changes, the government changes that happen in each election, the political standpoint, the economic standpoint of the country also changes. one government comes in, policies change, another government comes in, policies change. So how can we be consistent? How is this affecting us?
Yeah, that is actually in democracies, this is inevitable.
Right.
Because you see, to gain power, you have to offer an alternative, right? Otherwise, there is no way of getting power. So the alternative should be through these policies and programs and others. There is nothing else that they can do. But there are ways to do. For example, running the government proper and efficiently without corruption is an alternative. But I don't think any of these people have offered that kind of an alternative. But I would say if you look at the fundamental, I will say that since 1977 to now, there is no fundamental change in the policy adopted by any government. Fundamental. There is no fundamental. Only the flavor is different. Flavor. And also certain ad hoc, abstract things that they do. The fundamental, for example, we have a market economy, we have a liberal trade system, we have a liberal migration system, we have various things, right? For the last 40 years, we have been having almost same kind of things. But I think the problem is that our politicians, when they get to power, they do certain abstract ad hoc things based on certain temporary, short-term ideas or beliefs. So sometimes lobbying and that. I think that is where we I would say the policy reversal is a problem, yes, in Sri Lanka policy reversal. Reversal is okay if that is the wrong policy, but if it should be driven by evidence. I would say in Sri Lanka, for the entire post-independent period, this development policy strategy is not guided by evidence. They are guided by ideologies. So ideologies cannot solve problems. They are good to talk. Now, if you look at our people in Sri Lanka, political people, they can talk, preach and tell, but to solve a problem, you need a pragmatic approach, right? So therefore, the politics problem, I would say Sri Lanka's political problem is much with the left, not with the right. Because it is the left actually that prevents this foreign direct investment and various other things. They are the ones who oppose this foreigners coming here and investing and various things. And sometimes we give into it because we care about votes and others. So it is a problem. But I think policy shift is inevitable in a democratic system. Policy shift is inevitable. You cannot prevent it, right? But those policy shifts should be progressive. It should not be regressive. Now, if you look at United States, if you take Democratic Party and Republican Party, they have one is center left, other one is center right. Two political parties. One is following more market systems, other one is little bit less market systems and more government intervention. Right? But their actions are grounded on developing the people's capacity and their private entrepreneurship, enterprise, and private individual economic activity both. But their approach is different. So I would say that yes, it's okay to have policy differences, but they should be progressive. But in Sri Lanka, as you correctly said, sometimes they are regressive. They are regressive, and sometimes I would say Sri Lanka's fundamental problem in policy making is our policies are driven by ideologies.
And political.
Political, social, cultural ideologies. Not by evidence. For example, let me give you an example. To decide whether to tax a particular industry or not, you should actually do research and find out what is going to be the actual impact of that tax on that. You need evidence, scientific evidence. Not just what people say and write and what Marx said or what that person, this person said. You need evidence to find out what this tax is going to do. And based on that, you should take action. So in Sri Lanka, I would say all these policies are in a mess because policies are not driven by scientific evidence, not research based. So that they are based on various political, social and other cultural ideologies that they have in mind. Something somebody said and somewhere they said maybe 2000 years ago, but we do not know whether they match the current world and whether they are true in our society. And so I would say that yes, the politics is a problem, but that is inevitable in a democratic system. Alternatively, is one-party system. So if you don't like this change of policies and all, you have to go for one. So you have to choose between these two, one-party system to this. So it is a choice for the people, right? If people like a one-party system, they can say we need a one-party system, so we don't need this. But then when you have a one-party system, they will say that no, we need another system. So practically, in a democracy, political shifts are inevitable. As a result of that, political parties are actually formed on the basis of certain ideologies, policies and strategies they believe. So therefore shifts are possible, but do progressive things. That is the only way we can get out of that.
Yes, that was a very detailed conversation, and I honestly feel like I was sitting down with an encyclopedia. There was a lot of information there. And yes, with all that, just I know I said the previous one was the final question, but I cannot not ask this question. It's people like you who have so much knowledge and so much vision, and I'm sure you're not the only economist out there, but there's so many, like you said, in this country who are capable. So, what is the contribution of this knowledge force into getting out of this economic crisis? How can you help?
Yes, I think if you want actually the intellectuals independent intellectuals, not the people who are getting the positions in the government, because when you get a position, you will have to be divided by the certain. To that actually, let me give you examples from Japan and Korea and now China. Japan, the way they solve this problem is they created a system called National Innovation System. What is that? They actually created a combined mechanism where universities, research institutes, private sector and government institutes are combined through a counseling system, advising system, development system. For example, let me give you an example. Suppose the Department of Agriculture of the government want a solution to a problem in agriculture. So they have a link with the Department of Agriculture in a university or research institute, and they do this project. And these people do research and give an independent outcome. And that is implemented. So that I think this talking to people, having meetings and having media meetings this is not the way to do things. You see, this way you can't do. And you need to do research. You see that now this debt trap. How to get out of this debt trap requires very serious macroeconomic research.
And we are not doing it right now.
Maybe they are doing it. We are doing it ourselves. Economists are doing, they are publishing, maybe they are reading them, maybe they are not reading them.
So just the involvement is very less. The involvement that they get from these knowledge sources.
Yeah, I think they do have their own intellectuals. Yes, governments do have their own intellectuals. Central bank has economists, our students and our colleagues. They are wonderful people. In the treasury, they are wonderful people. There are people, you can't say that they don't have. But the problem is that you need not these bureaucrats, you need actually independent people who can tell the policymaker that if you do this is going to be the end of it. This is going to happen, right? This will be the consequence. So that I think, governments and policymakers get actually our independent ideas through policy briefs and papers also. I should say that they talk to us and they individually talk to us and have conversations with us and other economists in the country, and that is true. But the problem I say is that you need a more systematic approach. Now, for example, universities are given research money by the government. But that research money should be spent on solving problem-solving research. Problem-solving research, not this superficial ideological research. That tax money should be spent on solving. For that, actually, we need to prioritize research institutes, universities research with the national research agenda. That what they need, what kind of problems they need to solve. I'm not only talking about this economic thing. If you look at engineering, look at medicine, health sector. The problem in Sri Lanka is that a lot of people appear to know everything in Sri Lanka. This is a problem. When medical people talk, they know economists, and when economists talk, they know health and all. That is not how you handle things. We should understand that these different issues are complex issues, problems that can be understood only by experts in that area. Not a general understanding. Engineering problems cannot be understood by doctors or economists. So that I think my take is that government, unless you create, for that there are two ways of doing that. One, you need a planning commission in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka needs a planning commission. This is not a planning like communist plan. We don't have a planning commission in Sri Lanka. We don't plan what we need for the future and what should be done, how we develop the human resources, human capital, physical capital, technology, and we don't have that. We just have a political plan presented by the government for some time and that is implemented by the bureaucrats. Now, for example, to give you an example, in India, they had a planning commission implemented during the planning period, but they did not repeal it. What they did was they converted into a council, which is called now Niti Ayog. It's a planning commission. This is where independent intellectuals of all sorts, there are medical, engineering, economics, sociologists, all of them are there. So they are doing research. They are doing research about policies, programs, actions, and they give independent research outcomes. So you need, and then the programs are planned and implemented based on this evidence, not based. And you need to remember that governments cannot always listen to one scientist. You need to understand that, because governments has to look after all the people in the country. So therefore, they have to listen to everybody. They have to. So they are compelled to choose policies that are amenable to most people, not simply. So therefore, sometimes best scientific solution cannot be practically implemented in a country. That will require persuasion and acceptance by the people and all. But yes, we need a I would say we need a very coherent planning system, not economic plan. We need a market economic planning system, not command economic plan. In a market economic plan, and then implement those plans through a coherent mechanism. And that is not about this government. Since 1977, when we liberalized the economy, we dismantled all these things that were there in the finance ministry, and we simply do bureaucrats are doing certain things, but we need the new mechanism. Yes.
Yes, sir. So thank you very much for that very extensive conversation. We're very grateful and very thankful that you were here with us. That was very interesting to show on that young crowd who is confused about what's going on has a better outlook on what's happening. I'd say the end, but very positive and very hopeful note that Sri Lanka doesn't have to be struggling for a while, because we can get out of this. It's not as bad as it seems. So as long as we are hopeful and strong as a nation, we could always recover. So, yep, thank you very much for joining in that session of the Roundup with Thinali. We hope to see you with another very interesting conversation. So, yep, thank you for joining in, thank you for tuning in. Stay with us for some very interesting stuff that will be coming up. Don't forget to drop a like, share, and also put a comment if you think there's any sort of improvements that we could do. We would love to hear your thoughts. Yes, so thank you very much, and it's a wrap.